I want to, of course, there's Osama bin Laden, who was stuff of legend, that operation by the Americans made into countless book deals and Hollywood movies. There's Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, who was taken out by a US drone while he was in Baghdad. There's Baghdadi. That happened during Trump. I'm not giving these examples to say, hey, in India we did it, and we say, good, we did it. I'm just saying, when you read Mr. Azad in the Western press, oh, if this turns out to be true, India will be like the Russians or the Saudis. There is no memory, it seems, of the Americans or the Israelis. I just wanted to make that point. But Mr. Azad, go ahead.
Yes. In fact, it's well known that the operations done by the Israelis and the USA have the sanction right from the top, from the Prime Minister and by the President. Now, I want to make 2 points, and it's a very interesting thing. This Nijjar gentleman, there was a reward of 1 million rupees on him, 10 lakh award. He was involved in murders over here. Interpol had sent a red corner notice. There was nothing which the NIA had not done. If only Canada would have extradited this gentleman to India, his perhaps life would have been saved. The other point which I want to make is, when we are talking about Canada not having appropriate laws, I just want to point out, when the truckers were on strike, Canada took a very firm action against them.
Yeah.
And secondly, when there are death threats, in fact, Canada also has some kind of law against hate speech or incitement, if I'm not aware, but I think so. But if there is a threat to the life of Indian diplomats, how can you not register a case? I don't understand. These are basic principles of law which need to be followed. And in the end, I must say that secessionism is something which the entire world is worried about. And if in one country it is being propagated or somehow being encouraged, this will lead to a kind of an impact and ramifications in other countries too. So I think whether it's the Five Eyes or whether it's G7, all of us, we have to sit back and look into it very, very seriously.
Okay, I've got a couple of minutes left. I want to give Chris and Terry comments, but Master Katju, I know you have to go. Do you want a 10-seconder before you leave us? Just a 10-seconder.
I think Yasho has made very, very significant points. These are points that we need to ponder over. The Canadians have to, especially, and there has to be an international consensus now on how to deal with these situations, and especially that if red corner notices have been issued, if the NIA, as our colleagues on the panel themselves acknowledge, has acquired expertise and is probing things, surely that should be accepted. And my last point, that in a purely law, a murder investigation, where does the politics come in? How does a murder investigation lead to the Prime Minister standing up and saying credible allegations and potential links without anything to back him? That is passing it is passing strange to me. Thank you, Barkha. I have to leave. Please forgive me.
Okay, thank you. No problem. So we're in the last couple of minutes. Chris, do come in with your thoughts on this international consensus. Will it come? What shape might it take? Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I think it depends on what if or any evidence that the Canadians have. I think if we start seeing sort of Jamal Khashoggi kind of CCTV and that kind of forensic evidence, then the whole game will change. But I think what India will continue to do, as long as there's no evidence, is play hardball on the issue. But I think on the global allies of India, we want proof from the Canadians, because this issue has been since, even 2010, we had a government inquiry in Canada, which basically said Canadian intelligence of the domestic and foreign botched the whole investigation up. So we already know that there's retired intelligence figures in Canada. Whenever there's a Khalistani story, spin it, and all the newspapers in Canada take it. So now as this has become a global issue, I think what we'll see is a lot of sort of Western people in the United States and the UK and Australia will be sort of putting the onus onto Canada. How are you going to resolve this problem? But I think the positive thing is, that now Western governments and security officials have an acronym and an abbreviation, which is pro-Khalistan extremism. And a lot of nations and a lot of leaders are now saying, we've got to deal with this problem. So I think Canada will be getting a lot of sort of shade on the international state at the minute if it doesn't provide evidence.
Yeah, Terry, what's your best estimate, given how long you've seen politics as well in Canada, of what Trudeau's options are now?
Well, I think his options are pretty hopeless. I think that he's simultaneously painted himself into a corner while putting a noose around his own neck. It's a rare feat, but he's put himself in an impossible position where he's absolutely needs to come up with conclusive evidence. And it's starting to sound like he doesn't have it. I mean, we've been waiting and it's not coming. And apparently the Allies don't have it and the Indians don't have it. And he needs to come up with something pretty soon, or I think he is finished. I would just let me make one final point, if I may. We started to talk about the problem in Canada of just plain gullibility. People who, with a lack of experience of the world, haven't looked into this, who assume that, well, these the Khalistanis, they seem like very nice people. They invite me to the Gurdwara, to their Vaisakhi parades, and I'm not watching when the parade floats go by with the pictures of gun-toting martyrs and assassins on them. I'm looking the other way. They let it happen. They get pushed around, and if they ever say a bad word about the Khalistan movement, there's instantly protests, and MPs are berated by their constituents who happen to be Khalistanis, who say, well, you can't say that. Well, you can't call us extremists. And why are you saying this about the World Sikh Organization or Sikhs for Justice? These are respectable, fine organizations, good, upstanding Canadians, and they vote. And they vote en masse for you. This vote bank politics, it works in Canada. It's a nice little arrangement between the political parties and these what everyone else considers extremists. They are. What I'm saying is the politicians are gullible. You mentioned the 2018 fiasco when Trudeau visited India and the convicted terrorist came to dinner. I worked on that story. I broke that story. I know the ins and outs of that. And, here's the real story, folks. The Liberal Party, the highest echelons in the governing party of a G7 country, didn't get it that it might not be a bad idea to have a convicted terrorist dining on an official visit to New Delhi with the Prime Minister. They didn't see that coming. How gullible do you have to be to not get that?
Well, that's the point. He was photographed with Sophie Trudeau, who was then still married to Justin Trudeau, till the Canadian High Commission rescinded the second invitation to dinner. Ambassador Puri, I have to close. Terry makes it sound like Trudeau doesn't know what to do next. What will India do next? We've already suspended new visas. What do you think we'll do next?
Look, we are certainly going to up the ante, because if he finds himself in a bit of a fix, why should the others let him off the hook? Especially given the fact that we've been talking to the Canadians about this business of letting the Khalistanis have a free play for a long time. But, I really want to again say this point. I don't know how this particular element, I completely agree that India-Canada relations have different dimensions, also very important, solid dimensions. But how all of this will play out, because, ways and means will have to be found to dial down some of these elements. And that interest is not, forget the question of India and forget the question of Justin Trudeau. That interest lies with his allies. And that is something that, Barkha, you will need to have another program on.
All right. I think here's the interesting point. To dial this down, Trudeau needs to forget he ever said what he did. If he does that, he gets roasted at home. So it's a no-win situation for Trudeau, at least from the Indian context. That's the corner, as Terry said, he's painted himself into. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Yasho Azad, to Chris, to Terry, Ambassador Puri, earlier to Ambassador Katju. This story isn't going anywhere. We're going to continue to follow every dimension of it. Thank you for watching this evening, and see you again.